I remember the day it arrived, like most disappointments, wrapped in something that first looked like joy. A creamy white envelope, gold foil edges, my sister's name in perfect calligraphy. For a moment, I smiled. Weddings always made me soft. I thought about my girls in little dresses, thought maybe this would be a moment to pull us closer again. But when I opened the RSVP card, my stomach did something it hadn't done since college, tightened with quiet panic. There were only 2 name slots. Mine. And a +1. No mention of my daughters. I told myself it was probably just a printing oversight. Maybe they expected me to write them in. But the whole thing felt too sterile. Too rehearsed. Like the kind of formality that left no room for actual family. I held the invitation in my hand longer than necessary. Maybe I'm just overthinking it, I whispered aloud, but even my own voice sounded unsure. I'm 46. I work full-time in finance. Single mom to 2 teenage girls who still think I'm cool sometimes, mostly when their phones are dead. We live about 90 minutes from where I grew up, close enough to visit, far enough to breathe. In my family, I've always been the yes person. Need help moving? Ask me. Can't make rent? I've got you. Emergency babysitter, last-minute holiday host, emotional landfill? I do it all. No one ever said it out loud, but I was the fixer. The wallet. The quiet one who didn't make waves. So when my sister just hinted, that she might have to scale back the wedding because of budget issues, I didn't wait for her to ask. I offered $15,000. Cash. Just want you to have your dream day, I said. She cried. I smiled. My kids asked if they could help make decorations. And I kept my voice calm and kind, even though something inside me wanted to scream, can't we just be part of it this time? For months earlier, I got that late-night call from her, all panic and sighs about losing the venue deposit. I was doing dishes. She was doing damage control. I told her not to worry, that I'd handle it. And just like that, she stopped crying. The silence on the line stretched. Then I heard my mom in the background, "You're so lucky to have a sister like her." I stared at the soap bubbles in the sink, wondering when lucky started sounding like a curse. It wasn't generosity. It was pattern. I wasn't the golden child. I was the ATM with a heart. They loved what I gave them, not who I was. But I smiled through it. That's what you do when the only way to be seen is to be useful. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, I stayed in the loop just enough to feel left out. No invitations to menu tastings, no updates on seating, no sneak peeks at centerpieces. I got the "we've got it covered" texts, the polite dodges. I still showed up. Still brought wine to the dress fittings. Still sent cute texts about table favors I saw online. My girls would ask, "Why aren't we going to the rehearsal?" or "Why doesn't Auntie ask us to help?" And I'd smile like it didn't sting. "It's just not our kind of wedding, sweetheart," I'd say. And then I'd go sew their dresses for the event, dresses they'd never wear because they weren't in the wedding. I stitched each hem like a prayer, maybe this time, will be enough. The night before the wedding, we all met at some high-end restaurant in the city. The kind of place with white tablecloths and waiters who refill your glass before it's empty. My sister looked radiant. Her fiancé was charming. They made rounds like politicians, shaking hands, laughing too loud. When they got to our table, they smiled but didn't say my kids' names. Not even once. She introduced bridesmaids, photographers, her future in-laws. "This is Heather," she beamed, hugging a friend. She helped me design the invites. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. When there was a quiet moment, I asked her, lightly, "Hey, I noticed the RSVP didn't have the girls' names, should I just write them in?" She laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, that? Just a printing error. Don't stress." Her fiancé added, "You know how these venues are. Tight seating. Kids are tricky with head counts." He said it like I'd brought extra baggage instead of my children. I nodded, the way you do when disagreeing would ruin dinner. Inside, something cracked. Not broke, but cracked. That was the first time I truly felt like an outsider in my own family. Like I was standing just outside a glass door watching them celebrate, and they'd locked it from the inside. The next morning, I was making coffee when a courier dropped off a new envelope. Not fancy like the invite. Just a plain white packet, sealed tight. Inside were 2 wristbands. Bright red. Stamped in bold letters, "Do not admit, minors." I stared at them. Cold in my hands. Like evidence. Not of a party. But of something uglier. Something I couldn't unsee. We arrived early. Not because I was eager, but because I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me flustered. My girls were dressed in soft blue dresses I'd sewn myself, curls pinned, tiny bracelets glinting in the morning sun. I wore a deep navy suit, simple makeup, steady smile. We looked like we belonged there. The venue sat perched above the cliffs of Santa Barbara, all whitewashed walls and manicured lavender lining the walkways. I held my daughter's hands as we approached the entrance, the breeze brushing the hem of their dresses. Then, he stepped in front of us. "Excuse me, ma'am," the young man said, flipping through a clipboard. "Are these your children?" I blinked. "Yes. I'm Venora. Sister of the bride." His eyes dropped to the page. "I'm sorry, your kids aren't on the approved list. We've been instructed, no minors allowed beyond this point." I stared at him, stunned. "I paid for this venue." "I understand," he said, voice stiff, apologetic. "But we have clear instructions. No exceptions, ma'am." I asked for my sister. "She's in makeup. Not to be disturbed." And just like that, I stood frozen. My hands still wrapped around the girls. Cars pulled in behind us. Guests stepped out in soft pastels, sunglasses, laughter, the sound of heels on stone. No one looked at us. I turned. Walked them back to the car. We sat inside for a moment, the air conditioner humming. My oldest finally broke the silence. "Did Auntie not want us here?" I swallowed. Hard. "It's just a grown-up thing. I'll explain later." They stared out the window. My youngest clutched the little purse she'd brought, the one with the homemade card she'd drawn for her aunt. I couldn't breathe. A woman in a wide-brimmed hat passed by on the sidewalk. She glanced into the car, then said to no one in particular, "Thank goodness they kept it child-free. Keeps the tone classy." She wore a gold necklace. I bought that necklace for my sister 2 Christmases ago. I closed my eyes. Then opened them. "You're going home with your dad," I said, steady as I could. "I'll stay for a bit. Make sure everything's okay." I kissed them both, forced a smile, shut the car door. They waved as the car pulled away. I turned back to the venue, walking with shoulders straight, the heat of shame crawling up my neck like ivy. I smiled at strangers. Nodded like I belonged. I lied with my face because I had no words left that wouldn't come out shaking. Inside, everything was pristine. White linen tables. floral installations that likely cost more than my rent. A bridesmaid passed by with a flute of champagne and said, not quietly, "Good thing Venora's kids aren't here. They would have ruined the vibe." I stopped walking. Turned. What vibe, exactly? My cousin Ellie, holding a plate of canapés, froze. "Venora. I didn't see you. I heard you." She flushed. "It wasn't me, it was. I mean, look, the groom's family insisted on a no-kids policy. It wasn't personal. Then why not tell me?" She hesitated. "Your sister didn't want to hurt your feelings. She thought maybe you wouldn't come if you knew. So you used my money to book a venue that excluded my children. And you just didn't tell me." Her silence said everything. Weeks ago, in an email, my sister had written, "We found the venue of our dreams." She sent pictures. She never mentioned the policy. Just thank yous and hearts. They'd erased my kids with the same smoothness they used to erase my presence in every family decision. And I let them. By the time the ceremony ended and we moved to the reception tent, I was running on fumes. I found my name at a table near the kitchen entrance, next to a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. The lights were warm, the music too polished. Everyone clinked glasses and beamed at each other like this day belonged to them all. The MC took the mic, thanked the groom's parents, the bridesmaids, the officiant, distant relatives who had flown in just for the big day. My name didn't come up. The wine in my glass was dry and flat. I glanced over at the bridal table. They were drinking sparkling rose. Different labels. Different tears. A woman leaned over and said, "You must be so proud. This day is perfect." I took a breath, held her gaze. Perfection comes at a price. 15,000 to be exact. She blinked. I didn't smile. I didn't raise my voice. But I said it loud enough for the table to go quiet. Later, during the photo session, a photographer with a headset waved me aside. "We need a full family shot. Mind stepping back?" I stepped back. Watched my sister pull her new in-laws close. Her veil fluttered in the breeze. Everyone leaned in. The shutter clicked. Just like that, we were cropped out. 2 days had passed since the wedding, but the silence still clung to the walls like dust no one bothered to clean. I woke up to an empty house. The kids were already off to school, my husband at work. It was just me, the faint hum of the fridge, and a cup of cold coffee I'd forgotten to finish. On the counter, right where I left it, sat the wedding program. I picked it up for the 3rd time, flipping it open like maybe, just maybe, something had changed. The pages still smelled faintly of roses and ink. Each line, each name. And again, not mine. Not once. My eyes landed on the spot where I knew it should have been. Right there, under special thanks. Instead, it read, "To everyone who made this day possible." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was the only thing left to do. I didn't expect fireworks or my name in bold. But nothing? After the money, the help, the emotional labor? Nothing? It wasn't the money. It was the erasure. The kind that slices quietly, clean, and leaves you wondering if you ever existed in their story at all. That afternoon, I stood in the laundry room folding towels when it all started lining up in my head. The unsigned birthday card from last year. Group texts where I was only looped in after the plans were set. The family photo from Thanksgiving where someone had conveniently cropped me out, oops, didn't notice. Even little things. My sister once joked, "You're like the family's ghostwriter. Always there, but never in the picture." She laughed when she said it. I did too, back then. But today, it didn't feel like a joke. Later, I got a call from Ellie, my cousin. She sounded hesitant, like she'd been rehearsing. She didn't forget, "Venora. Your name. It wasn't an accident." "What do you mean?" She didn't want the groom's side to think you were over-involved." "Over-involved?" I repeated, stunned. I was the involvement. There was no yelling. No dramatic gasp. Just silence. And somehow, that made it worse. That evening, I sat on the couch with my phone, trying to put words together. First attempt, I noticed my name wasn't in the program. I deleted it. Second try, "I'm hurt." Backspace that too. Final message, "Glad the day went well." I hit send. No reply. For hours later, a thumbs-up emoji popped up on my screen. It felt colder than no response at all. My husband sat beside me, reading. He glanced up. "You deserve better than this." I nodded. Then why does my silence feel like loyalty? He didn't answer. Didn't have to. The next morning, I was cleaning out an old drawer when I found it, an old voice memo my daughter had recorded years ago on my phone. She must have been 5. "Mom, you're the bestest helper. I love you more than peanut butter." I played it again. And again. There was something so honest in her tiny voice. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. I grabbed my journal, opened to a blank page. Started writing. Not just about the wedding. But everything. The time I babysat my sister's kids overnight while she took a me trip and no one thanked me. The birthday where everyone forgot. The hospital visit where I brought homemade soup and was asked to wait outside. Page after page. The pattern wasn't new. I'd just been too loyal to call it what it was. This wedding wasn't an exception. It was the latest chapter in a story I hadn't written. And maybe that's what hurt the most. I'd become a guest star in my own family. By late afternoon, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it to find a package on the mat, no note, no return label. Inside, wrapped in thin tissue, was a photo in a sleek black frame. The wedding. Everyone smiling. Laughing. I looked closer. No me. No kids. Not even in the background. The caption beneath the photo read, "Everyone who made this day perfect." I didn't break the frame. But something inside me cracked loud enough to echo. The soft hum of music echoed from the main hall as I stepped into the side rehearsal room. Tables covered in linen, a few scattered flower arrangements, the scent of eucalyptus and lavender, everything looked picture perfect. Except for the look on the 2 staff members' faces when I entered. They didn't see me at first. I heard one of them say, "They told us to delete any reference to her from the seating signs. Even the welcome slide." The other whispered, "And the speech intro." I had to rewrite it twice. I stepped closer. They froze, eyes wide. One of them, a young woman with a headset and clipboard, cleared her throat and said, "I'm sorry." It was a directive from above. I kept my voice calm. "From who?" They exchanged glances. Then the other staffer, a tall guy, barely older than my oldest, shrugged. You'd need to talk to the planner. Callista Rames. They scattered quickly. Left me standing there, in the middle of the room, like a statue someone forgot to move. I didn't move for a full minute. I just stood there, hands still, heart pounding slow but hard, like it already knew what I was about to find out. I found Callista near the ballroom entrance, pacing between her phone and a clipboard like someone avoiding judgment. Do you have a minute? I asked. She jumped a little, then smiled too wide. Of course. Mrs. Lane, right? I nodded. Let's speak privately. She led me into a small planning office, all pastel folders and mood boards. I didn't sit. Was my name intentionally removed? She hesitated. Her eyes flickered. I followed the chain of command, she said. There were sensitivities, and I didn't want to. Disrespect me? I cut in. She swallowed. I was under a lot of pressure. From who? She flinched at the tone. Instructions came down through the bride's mother. There was tension about visibility. I stared at her until she looked away. Show me the email, I said. She paused. Then, reluctantly, she reached into a drawer and pulled out a folded sheet, crumpled at the edges. She handed it to me. A printout. Text only. No sender info. Just a highlighted sentence. Please ensure all references to Venora Lane are removed from printed materials, slides, and announcements. I handed it back. In silence. Then said, I want to see everything. Drafts, edits, notes. To my surprise, she didn't argue. Maybe she was tired. Maybe guilt had finally outweighed fear. She led me into her office. Pulled up a folder on her computer. Showed me the redlined versions. My name, initially present. On the sponsorship page. On the family acknowledgements. On the special thanks scroll. Every instance, cut. I photographed them. Each screen. Each timestamp. She blinked fast, her eyes glassy. I didn't want this. I looked at her. Did someone order you to scrub my name? She nodded once. Quiet. Ashamed. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. Then I'll need the original email log, I said. Full archival version. She hesitated, then whispered, I can send it. But not until midnight. Send it then. I left her there, alone in her guilt. The air outside felt different. Heavier. I walked slowly past the reception hall, watching the staff place candles and adjust flower arches like nothing had happened. But it had. And it wasn't just one person. A memory hit me months ago, at my niece's birthday party. I'd overheard my sister on the phone with our mom, saying, "Don't worry. We'll manage it quietly." I thought she was talking about logistics. Now I knew better. They didn't just forget me. They worked together to erase me. The staff. The planner. My sister. Our mother. They were a quiet machine, moving chairs, printing programs, nodding politely while cutting me out piece by piece. I wouldn't confront them all at once. Not yet. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. And timing. I whispered to myself, I didn't pay 15 grand to stand in their shadow. That night, back home, after the kids were asleep and the house finally stilled, I sat in the kitchen with the light off. Just the glow of the laptop. A new email came in from Callista. Subject, requested files. Attached, one document. wedding_script_final.pdf. It was password protected. I entered the code she'd sent, 0811 Venora. The file opened. Pages loaded slowly, one by one. Every line she'd shown me in the planner's office was there. Only now. Highlighted in red. Each line my name once lived on. Each line someone had deleted it from. I stared at it. Hands trembling. Not from surprise. From the clarity. They hadn't just ignored me. They'd rewritten me out of the story. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror longer than I meant to. The overhead light cast a pale glow across my face, showing lines I never paid much attention to, creases carved not by age alone, but by years of swallowing my own voice. My reflection didn't look angry. It looked exhausted. Hollowed out by peacekeeping. I remembered every phrase I'd used to justify it, be the bigger person, keep the peace, don't start drama. Those lines once sounded noble. Now they felt like shackles someone else had written for me. I traced the edge of the sink and whispered, when did dignity start costing me family? No answer came, but for the first time, I understood, silence wasn't loyalty. It was obedience. I walked to my desk and pulled out a blank page. I didn't want rage to guide me. Rage burns hot, then flickers out. What I needed was clarity. I began writing, slowly, each word deliberate. Going forward, I will no longer contribute time, money, or presence to any event where my children or I are disrespected or erased. I paused. Then added, this is not a warning. It is a boundary. My hands didn't shake. I copied it into an email, addressed it to Marvella. Then, after a breath, CC'd my mother. And my cousin. No room for misunderstanding. Before hitting send, I read it aloud, not for effect, but to hear the tone. Even. Unemotional. Final. Then I pressed send. And sat back. I didn't feel lighter. But I felt defined. The call came 9 minutes later. What is this? Marvella's voice snapped through the speaker. You're making a scene. Over what, exactly? I kept my tone level. I'm not making a scene. I'm drawing a line. Stop with the theatrics, she scoffed. It wasn't your wedding. It didn't need to be about me, I said. But you made sure it wasn't even with me. She went silent for a beat. Then, you're just bitter because I finally had my moment. I closed my eyes. If your moment required erasing me, it wasn't a moment. It was a message. She exhaled sharply. You're overreacting. I'm just reacting, I replied. Calmly. Maybe that's new for you. The line clicked dead. She hung up before I finished breathing out. I didn't call back. Minutes passed. I stayed seated, staring at the blank wall, letting the quiet fill the space her dismissal left behind. I expected heat. Instead, I felt something strangely solid. Like the slow formation of a spine where softness used to be. A soft knock came at the door. My daughter stepped into the room, cautious. She'd heard enough to know it wasn't a simple conversation. Is everything okay with Aunt Marvella? She asked. I considered lying. The way I always had. But this time, I refused to teach quiet suffering. No, I answered gently. It's not. She waited. Not for details, just for truth. But I'm okay, I added. Her shoulders eased. She crossed the room and sat beside me. It's weird, she said quietly. But I'm proud of you. It struck deeper than any apology could. We sat in silence a while longer, not as mother and child, but as witnesses to a shift. I'd always taught her kindness. That night, I taught her something new, self-respect. Later, after she went to bed and the house settled into night, I picked up my phone. A new notification blinked at the top. Unknown number. I opened it. A screenshot. My email. Forwarded. Followed by a comment in a group chat I wasn't part of. She really thinks she's the victim? Face with tears of joy. No names attached. Just laughter. Dismissal. I stared at it. Not with shock. Not even hurt. What I felt was colder. Truth. They weren't confused. They weren't unaware. They were comfortable. And that made them dangerous. I locked my phone and set it face down. That message didn't fracture me. It confirmed I'd been right to leave the table. They could laugh. I had drawn the line.
The investigation is finished. The courtroom work is next. Prosecutors in Honolulu will present a simple build, a fixed interior hallway in Halawa, a single recovered weapon, medical findings of multiple chop wounds, and lab results that place the victim, Amy Takaki Bright, on the tomahawk and on clothing seized the night before the discovery. The emphasis isn't drama, it's sequence. Wednesday night to Thursday late morning, 2 evidence streams processed under one chain, and a window that closes fast. Defense counsel will press each link. Mixed DNA shows contact, not who wielded the weapon. Chain of custody must be tight, who collected what, when, and how contamination was controlled. Clothing seized before the scene was known is powerful for the state. The defense will ask if innocent transfer can explain it, whether elimination samples were complete, and whether any paperwork gap weakens the story. That's the system doing its job. A verdict shouldn't rest on narration, it should rest on records that survive cross-examination. The court has already set the posture for what comes next. After the indictment, a judge maintained no bail and ordered a mental health evaluation, standard steps in a violent felony case with documented lethality. Those decisions protect the public while preserving every right the accused holds. They are not a preview of guilt. They are a guardrail while the case moves toward trial. Keep the case straight, one victim, one scene, one timeline. Amy Takaki Bright, 43, was found inside her Halawa home. Authorities have named her husband, Frank Bright, 38, as the defendant, charged with murder in the second degree and indicted by a grand jury. Early reporting referenced a $1 million bail figure. The live ruling that followed left him held without bail, with the evaluation in process. As of October 18, 2025, this case remains pending in Hawaii court. There are no alternate outcomes to report and no motive claims we can responsibly add. 2 quiet takeaways matter beyond this file. First, welfare checks save time and sometimes lives. If something feels wrong, call. Second, accuracy is a form of respect. Families deserve a record that's careful and clear, not speculation. That's been our aim from the first hallway description to this final minute, facts that align, language that doesn't overreach, and a single, coherent account that will stand when read aloud under oath. I've covered enough scenes to know this, accuracy is respect. A welfare check, a careful chain of custody, and a community that pays attention, that's how we honor Amy and protect each other. We can disagree about policy, but we can agree on this: if something feels wrong, speak up. Now I'd love to hear from you. What would you tighten first in a case like this, the timeline or the evidence handling? Tell me where you're watching from. If this story moved you, or didn't, say why. And if you want more careful, human true crime, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next case.
I drove back to the venue late afternoon. The shadows were long, light golden and fading. My daughters were with their dad. I needed space to see clearly. I walked through the corridors, past the ballroom where wine glasses shimmered on tables and staff ushered guests to stage. I found the planning office and demanded access to seating charts. The spreadsheet I'd seen weeks ago was gone. The version on the screen now showed no entries for my children. Confused, I asked a staff member. He stammered there was a last-minute change. The guest list was updated. His voice cracked when I pressed, "Show me the earlier version." He hesitated, then reluctantly pulled up a backup. The earlier version had their names, bold, clear. The new one was blank in their row. My chest hurt. Rage rose quietly. This wasn't carelessness. It was erasure. I whispered, "I gave more than money, I gave trust." And now it was used against me. I called Isolde Brandt. She'd helped me before. Her voice trembled when I explained. She found a hidden folder in the planner's drive, old drafts, time-stamped files, redlined edits. We sat shoulder to shoulder in her office, tracking each deletion every time a child's name was scrubbed. I took screenshots. Captured file metadata. Each timestamp told truth. She leaned close, voice low. "I've never seen something this coordinated." I nodded. This isn't about hurt anymore. It's about accountability. She hesitated, then whispered, "We'll expose it." That evening, I drafted a post. Not public yet. But carefully worded, I funded a wedding. My children were erased. I tagged the planner, venue, family accounts, but kept tone matter-of-fact. I forwarded it to a journalist friend with a note, "This was built on deception." I emailed the planner, "Full logs or public explanation tomorrow." My phone rang, my sister, voice cracking. "You're turning this into a circus." I replied quietly, "I'm asking for truth." Later, in my bedroom, quiet pressing in, memories came flooding. Texts I never replied to. Events I barely showed up for. Times I was present yet invisible. I placed the deleted seating chart printout into a folder marked for everyone to see one day. I called my younger daughter quietly. "One day you'll see they tried to remove you from their story. But I won't let them." She nodded, soft. I tucked her in. My resolve sharpened. I would speak, even if no one listened. At midnight, the email arrived, anonymous, wedding_archive_backups.zip. I hesitated, fingers hovering over download. Then clicked. The folder opened, unedited versions, raw logs, every version before deletion. Names of my girls, my name. I felt power rise. Proof in my hands. After the email from my niece, I couldn't sleep. The hotel room was silent, but my thoughts weren't. I kept staring at my phone, the screen still lit with her words. I saw the version they edited. "You were cut out." It didn't sting anymore. Not like before. It was confirmation. Cold. Clear. By the time I got dressed and walked back toward the venue, the last of the guests were leaving. Only staff lingered, clearing dishes and folding chairs. I stayed in the shadows, made my way around to the back area where the family had been gathering earlier. A soft hum of voices drifted from behind the curtain. Crew and family mixed there, a sort of after party. I stepped quietly around the corner until one voice caught me. She had a fiery closing line, but we had to cut it. I paused, spine stiff. Another voice muttered back, "Yeah, per request. You know how that family is. Don't want anything unscripted." I stepped forward and said calmly, "Excuse me." "Cut what?" The coordinator's eyes widened, shoulders jerking up in surprise. "Oh, your speech." I stared. "By whose order?" They hesitated. Then, under their breath, "Higher-ups." "From family." "I wasn't supposed to tell you." I held out my hand. "Show me the versions." They pulled out a folder, glancing nervously. Inside were drafts. Mine was there, marked up, lines slashed out in red ink. The closing paragraph was gone. Entire metaphors removed. Even a sentence about my kids was cut. They didn't just edit. They censored. I looked up, jaw tight. They took my voice before I even spoke. And they weren't done. Back inside, near the table where gifts were being boxed up for transport, something caught my eye. A familiar bag. The wrapping paper I'd chosen with my daughter. The one with hand-stitched initials, and a custom note that had said, "For your next chapter, with love, Aunt Venora." The card was gone. Taped over was a tag in scripted gold, from Marvella. I picked it up. The seam was still crooked from where I'd folded it. The ribbon was the same. Just relabeled. I turned to one of the servers. "Who told you to change this?" They froze. I was just following instructions. They said Aunt Marvella forgot to tag her gift. I didn't know. I snapped a picture, time-stamped. The edges of the original tag still peeked from under the gold one. They took my sincerity and renamed it theirs. The words weren't loud, but they burned in my chest. A few guests remained in a side room, sipping wine. I walked in, calm but firm. "If what you heard tonight was perfect sincerity," I began, "you were listening to a version of me someone else edited." Chairs creaked as heads turned. I pulled out the pages, the redlined speech, and held them up. Then I showed the photo of the swapped gift. Some people gasped. Others looked down. I spotted my sister near the bar, eyes already rolling. "You're embarrassing the family," she said, voice dripping disdain. I looked her in the eye. Then maybe the family needed embarrassment to see truth. No shouting. No theatrics. I left the folder on the table and walked out. Let them stew in the silence they'd built. Back in my hotel room, I sat alone. Opened my laptop. Flicked through old text logs, voice notes, reminders I'd buried in digital corners. Every birthday party I planned, every hospital visit I sat through, every time I swallowed anger to keep the peace, it all washed over me. They didn't see silence as grace. They saw it as permission. I whispered to no one, "I am not an echo of your narrative. I will be the author of mine." I started drafting. Not a manifesto. Not a rant. Just clarity. Parts of my original speech. Screenshots. Time-stamped files. A message. I sent it to Monica, an old friend in PR. No caption. Just, "Hold this." I wasn't broken. Just sharpened. Midnight passed. The air felt still. Then, a vibration on my phone. A text from my niece. I saw the version they edited. "You were cut out." That was it. Their secret was no longer safe. The wind outside had picked up, and as I stepped out onto the gravel path that led toward the venue's back lot, my heels crunched harder than they should have. The valet area was oddly quiet. A few cars remained, but mine wasn't where I left it. I walked farther, scanning the dim lot until I found it shoved near the loading dock, tucked behind a catering van. It wasn't oversight. It was exile. I flagged down the nearest valet. He glanced at my claim ticket and then looked away. "Who moved my car?" I asked, flat. He hesitated, then muttered, "Ma'am, I can't say." No apology. No explanation. Just silence, like my presence was inconvenient. I stood there a moment longer, letting the chill press in around my collarbones. Not one word of defense. That's when it clicked. They hadn't just moved my vehicle. They moved me. I was no longer part of the picture. Halfway back to the venue entrance, my phone buzzed. My father's name lit up the screen. "Venora," he said the moment I answered, not even waiting for hello, "you're making more noise than dignity allows." I closed my eyes, heat rising behind them. "Dad, I'm not making noise. I'm making myself heard. There's a difference." His tone sharpened. "You always took things too far. Emotional. Loud. That's not strength. It's drama." "I stayed quiet for decades to protect your image," I said, voice steady, but trembling underneath, "and they cut my children out of their wedding. That's not family." A pause. Then came his final blow: "Be careful what you fight for, Venora. Some bridges don't rebuild." I breathed in. Maybe that's the point. He hung up. I stared at the screen until it went dark. Back at home later, after wiping off my makeup in silence, I walked into the dining room to check the wedding gift I had prepared for the couple. An engraved photo box with old family pictures, curated over months. Not cheap, but more than that, personal. It wasn't there. I checked the counter. Then the guest room closet where I had stored extra decorations and wrapping paper. Nothing. I texted Marvella. "Did you move the gift I brought for you too?" It was wrapped in navy with a silver bow. 3 dots. Then a reply. "Oh, it's still in transit. There was a shipping error, I think." But that didn't track. Because I remembered her saying earlier, we had to delay opening some because of the photos. That wasn't a shipping delay. That was strategic withholding. I pulled up the delivery app on my phone, checking the tracking history. Timestamp confirmed delivery before the ceremony even started. Screenshotted it. "It was delivered at 2:43 p.m., I replied. She came back with a new lie: logistics got mixed up. "Don't overthink it." I didn't reply. I saved the screenshot. Then walked straight to my desk. Within the hour, I had all the files ready. The unedited version of my speech. The seating chart with my kids' names erased. The photo of the swapped gift label. A valet ticket next to my car, timestamped. All of it. I opened Facebook. Captioned it clearly. They edited the truth. So here's the whole version. Then hit publish. 15 minutes passed. First comment: "What the hell?" Second: "Unbelievable." Messages started pouring in. DMs, tags. Screenshots of family chat bubbles lighting up. Defenses. Excuses. Finger pointing. Then Marvella again. This time in the family group chat. "This is a betrayal, Venora. We could have handled this privately." I replied only once. "You didn't handle it privately. You erased me publicly. Now I'm correcting the record." Silence. Until my phone rang. New number. "Hi, This is Karen Wallace from WTL News. We saw your post. Would you be open to speaking with us tonight? I didn't know what I felt at that moment. But I knew I couldn't go back. As I sat there, staring out at the streetlights flickering against the driveway, a notification popped up. WTL Morning Lead, Family Wedding Sparks Online Firestorm, Guest Claims She Was Erased. I leaned back. I hadn't asked for a storm. But I wasn't hiding from it either. Sunday morning brought with it a cool breeze and the kind of quiet that settles heavy on the bones. I was halfway through my first cup of tea on the porch when Clara showed up, no call, no warning, just the rustle of her shoes on the gravel and that tight, anxious smile she wore when she knew she'd done something wrong. She held a gift bag, small and quiet, like it could soften the truth she carried in her other hand, an old family scrapbook. I didn't say anything. Just motioned to the chair across from me. She sat. Her eyes avoided mine for a second, then landed right where they needed to. It wasn't an accident, Venora. The seating. The edits. The delay with your gift, she said. They planned it. I breathed in slow, nodded once. I figured as much, I said, setting my cup down. But hearing it aloud, that's something else. They were afraid you'd overshadow her, she added. Said the day should be about unity, not reopening wounds. And cutting my children out is unity? I asked, voice even. She flinched. I voted for you to be included. I did. But I was outvoted. A pause stretched between us. She looked older than usual. Tired. Real. We didn't think you'd actually come, she said, voice breaking. I nodded again. Yeah. That's what hurts most. She left the bag. Inside was a photo of me, Mom, and her from some picnic I half remembered, taped beside a tiny box of lavender tea. I thanked her. No more words. Just walked her out. Watched her car pull away without looking back. Back on the porch, I sat again. The mug was cold, but I drank from it anyway. Bitterness and all. I let the silence wrap around me while memories paraded by, childhood birthdays, lazy summers, late-night talks that used to matter. My sister and I playing in the sprinklers barefoot. Her laugh. My son's tiny hand gripping mine in a crowded mall. All of it layered with warmth. And now, voids. I picked up my phone. Opened the app. Wrote one last post. Not to expose. To end it. To those who watched this unfold, this is not a curtain call. This is a bow. Sometimes dignity isn't in the fight. It's in knowing when to stop swinging. I hit publish. Closed the app. Let it go. Mid-morning drifted in soft and gold. I changed clothes and drove to the old chapel I hadn't stepped into since Easter. Not out of belief. Just peace. The pew creaked beneath me as I sat. The pastor spoke of turning tables, not in anger, but in grace. We turn tables, he said, but sometimes we need to turn ourselves too. I smiled, faintly. The sermon ended with, let go, not for them but for your soul. I whispered, I am. The sky outside was clear by the time I got back home. That kind of bright where everything feels a little more possible. I set up my phone on the windowsill, tapped record. Kids, if you ever wonder what happened at that wedding, I want you to know, you deserve to be celebrated. You were never the problem. And I'll never let anyone silence your place in my life again. I paused. Looked straight into the lens. Even when others forget you, I won't. I saved the video. Uploaded it privately. Sent the link to both of them. Later, I saw they'd watched it. No reply, just a heart emoji from my daughter and a thumbs up from my son. That was enough. I opened each social media app one by one. Removed them all, cousins, in-laws, even my sister. Every thread. Every ghost of connection. It felt like pruning a tree that had grown wild. Messy. But necessary. The phone buzzed just as I stood up to stretch. Message from a stranger. Your story helped me walk away too. I smiled. Not because I won. But because I finally stopped losing.